broken clock on the back wall, counting down till the last bell rings. You lock the door with the plastic smile, say this is just our little secret thing. Ink stains on my test paper, your hand leaning where it shouldn't be. You twist the rules like a gold ring, say it's love, say it's meant to be. Leave the kids alone, you're not a savior, you're a thief of home. Predator in school clothes, life in a cage is the place you go. See ya, Chomo, see ya, Chomo. We need justice, not a whisper, sorry, go. Leave the kids alone, leave the kids alone. You hide behind a chalk halo, fake men are on a crooked throne. They call you ma'am, they call you sir, you use that power, strip us to the bone. Female face, male face, same crime, same cold eyes when the door clicks shut. Courtroom shrug, they were almost grown. Light little sentence, deep little cut. Leave the kids alone, you're not a savior, you're a thief of home. Predator in school clothes, life in a cage is the place you go. See ya, Chomo, see ya, Chomo. Need justice, not a whisper, sorry, go. Judge with a tired handshake, gable falls like it's half awake. You get years, we can count on hands. We get scars, we can't understand. Names on a list, they move you towns. Paper walls, you still prowl around. Kids in rows like loaded guns. You pull the trigger, then you run. Leave the kids alone, you're not a savior, you're a thief of home. Predator in school clothes, life in a cage is the place you go. See ya, Chomo, see ya, Chomo. We need justice, not a whisper, sorry, go. Leave the kids alone, leave the kids alone, leave the kids alone.
Just when you thought you could turn your back and walk away, the dark cloud of human indignity follows you. You have no choice but to turn and look it in the eye. It's the sex offender hit list.
And an East Texas man has received 25 years in prison for sexually abusing two young girls. According to the Smith County Sheriff's Office, a report was received back in December that two girls had told their father they were being sexually abused in July of 2024. The father then reported the allegations to the Anderson County Sheriff's Office, which led to multiple agencies working together to identify the suspect and location. Both Raywin Lyons and Melissa Branch were arrested on 2 counts of aggravated sexual assault of a child. And on Monday, Lyons was sentenced to 25 years in prison, while Branch was found incompetent to stand trial.
Turning now to the courtroom, a Bloomington woman will spend nearly a century behind bars after a child pornography and sexual assault investigation from last year. 35-year-old Sarah Trout-Wine was arrested on 19 counts of various sexually related crimes in August of 2024. The investigation began when a technology company made a report after seeing videos being uploaded and shared that were believed to be child sex abuse material. After Bloomington police executed a search warrant, evidence of sexual assault and child pornography were located. Trout-Wine pleaded guilty in March of this year to 2 counts of predatory criminal sexual assault and 1 count of child porn production. Today, she was sentenced to 95 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections.
All new a judge has sentenced this Beaumont man to 20 years in prison for possession of child pornography. 39-year-old James Rollins pled guilty today. According to court documents, Rollins was caught watching child porn on his cell phone while staying in a halfway house in 2023. He was on parole at the time. Investigators say he had more than 3,600 explicit images on his phone. Prosecutors pushed the judge to add to the sentence, and that's what led to the total there of 20 years.
A man from Augusta was sentenced to 8 years in prison for distributing, possessing, and live streaming child sexual abuse. According to court documents, Homeland Security Investigations and Augusta Police Department began investigating Nathaniel Gagne in April of 2023. During a search warrant at his home, investigators say Gagne admitted to watching it, and police took 2 cell phones and an SD card containing hundreds of photos and videos. Gagne was also ordered to pay $23,000 in restitution and will be on supervised release for 10 years once his prison sentence is over.
A 78-year-old man accused of making child pornography. This happening now, the FBI asking for potential victims to come forward. Lee Clark is his name. He's been charged with production of child porn plus aggravated sexual abuse. Stillwater police say they and FBI agents received a tip last October that there was sexual content involving minors on Lee's computer. Evidence says investigators found hard drives, cell phones, and computers with this material. If found guilty, the 78-year-old would face up to life in prison. If you believe you or your child could be a victim, the FBI wants to hear from you.
Elmore County woman who pled guilty to sex charges in Autauga County has now learned just how long she'll serve in prison. Court filings show Farron Hudson has been sentenced to 30 years, followed by 10 years of mandatory probation. She pled guilty to sodomy last month. Area authorities say this is in conjunction to a 2021 child pornography case involving Farron's husband, Jason. He'll go to trial on sex charges in October.
New at 5, an East Texas man will now spend 15 years behind bars after being convicted on multiple counts of child pornography possession. According to Henderson County officials, Dustin Thomas Lloyd received his sentence for 4 counts of possession and must also register as a sex offender for life after his release. The investigation started through a cyber tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. In a statement, the district attorney's office said, quote, investigations are critical in bringing offenders like Lloyd to justice and ensuring the safety of our children.
A man received a 10-year sentence in Pueblo County after taking a plea deal in a child sexual assault case. 33-year-old Peter Seigel got 6 years in the Colorado Department of Corrections for his charge of criminal attempt sexual assault on a child, and another 3 years plus 1 year of mandatory parole for a second sexual assault charge.
A Claremont County man will spend the rest of his life behind bars for raping a child he was supposed to be protecting.
Local 12's Christian Hauser joins us now with details on the sentence, what the victim told the judge, and who the suspect said was to blame for the rapes. Christian.
Yeah, Adam and Megan, during the sentencing just a little while ago, Charlie Thederman was sentenced to at least 240 years in prison. Now, a jury found him guilty of 93 charges, including rape, as well as other sexual-related charges. But during today's hearing, he cast blame on everyone but himself, including the victim. Now, Thederman was led into court wearing his orange jumpsuit. Now, he had handcuffs as well as a folder of documents. He actually represented himself during the trial and did so again for today's sentencing. Now, Judge Jason Nagel offered Thederman the chance to speak. Now, Thederman spoke for nearly half an hour, blaming everyone but himself for these crimes. He even said it was a consensual sexual relationship with this victim. Here he is claiming that that victim was the one in control of these sexual assaults.
In every video the state showed, she never asked me to stop any sexual activity, but she had that power. She verified this during trial with the question about oral sex. She had the ability to do or not do anything at any time. In one of the videos the state did not show, came to my room and said, "I don't feel like doing anything tonight." And my response was, "Okay, give me a rain check for tomorrow."
Yes, you heard that right. Thederman admits to telling a child she could give him a rain check to sexually assault her the next day. Now, after he was finished speaking, the victim was then given her chance to address the judge as well as Thederman. Here's what she said about the years that she was being abused and raped.
When I turned 13, I never would have expected to be in the position where I'm at. The 6 years in that home was the worst 6 years of my life. All of the abuse and neglect hidden by lies so the CPS worker wouldn't take us. On top of that, the emotional abuse and manipulation took an immense toll on me. His apologies are like a slap in the face. He's only sorry he got caught. He paints himself as the victim, but we are the survivors of that home.
We are not naming this victim, but she did give us permission to videotape and record her statement in court. Now, after the hearing, I spoke with the assistant prosecutor, Christina Datillo, after the sentence was handed down. She spoke about how brave that victim was to come forward, and she also talked about how challenging the trial was for her since Thederman represented himself.
He actually questioned his own victim. She had to look at him and she had to answer his questions, as heinous, disgusting, and inappropriate as they were. And she did great. She really did. She was the composed young woman that you saw today. She should be proud of herself, and I hope she is.
Claremont County Prosecuting Attorney Mark DeColve briefly spoke after the sentencing as well. He says that he hopes this sends a message to anyone being abused to please come forward, and that if someone is sexually assaulting someone, especially a child, the prosecutor will push for the harshest sentence possible. And in this case, while it's technically not a life sentence, on a minimum of 240 years in prison means that Charlie Thederman will die there. Adam, back to you.
Absolutely disturbing. Christian, thank you. The abuse in this case was all caught on security cameras that Charlie Thederman himself installed in his Claremont County home. He tried to delete the videos, but Union Township police were able to recover the evidence. The minimum 240-year sentence is the longest the prosecutor says he could find in recent memory.
Now at 7, a Canton man will spend 30 years in prison after being convicted of 3 counts of child molestation. 41-year-old Simon Lucas Swan was found guilty of sexually abusing a 7-year-old child at the Walmart on Riverstone Parkway. He was arrested in June of 2024 after a Walmart employee called police. Prosecutors say it is a stark reminder that child abuse can happen anywhere, even in public.
A former girls basketball coach who sexually abused his young players will serve more than 33 years in federal prison. Dwayne Ewan apologized to his victims in court today, but neither they nor the judge believed any of his words. Our Dylan Ancheta has the story.
After handing down a sentence of more than 33 years, U.S. District Court Judge Michael Seabright told UN and the court that he acknowledges that this may play out to be a life sentence due to UN's age, but he said this is the right sentence. Inside the courtroom, the disgraced girls basketball coach walked in a white jumpsuit with shackles around his ankles. In the gallery, a number of his victims and their family members looked on. The court heard from 4 victims total. One of them spoke in person, the others via letters that were read by attorneys. There was a sense of heavy grief and emotion as they detailed the horrific sexual acts he did to them as teenagers. They called him a monster hiding in plain sight and explained how his warm, welcoming charm turned to gifts and eventual threats on their lives if he didn't get what he wanted. When it came time for sentencing, Judge Seabright said, quote, "You caused lost youth, all done in the pursuit of power and sex." The judge added that he did not trust UN at all and said that he believes that if he were to be released today, he would go out and do what he did all over again. UN did speak at sentencing, apologizing to his victims and their families, but both the judge and the victims agreed that his words were shallow.
Empty words. It meant nothing.
The judge thought that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad he saw fit and saw it with the same lens that we have for years. It was just a sigh of relief, and kind of like finally, that feeling of just finally getting what he deserved, after all these years of silence and torture. And yeah, it was a lot of happy tears and embracements of just being strong, and recognizing that for us women that have gone through all of this.
When asked what's her message to others who stood by Yuen and insisted that he was a good person, Shonaleku Ehu said those people were just as guilty as him. Now, in addition to his more than 33-year sentence, Yuen will also have to register as a sex offender and submit to searches and seizures of his electronic devices. He is also ordered to have no contact with children and pay $3,000 in restitution to one of his victims. Outside of federal court, I'm Dylan Encheta, Hawaii News Now.
Former deputy DA in the Pikes Peak region will not serve any prison time after admitting to sexually assaulting a child.
David McConkey was sentenced on Tuesday to 5 years of supervised probation after he pleaded guilty to one count of criminal attempt to commit sexual assault on a child in exchange for prosecutors dismissing the remaining charges against him. McConkey was convicted of sexually assaulting a child for 9 years from 2004 to 2013, starting with that victim when they were an infant.
Yeah, meanwhile, a Colorado Springs mother will spend 48 years in prison after a jury finds her guilty of abuse leading to her son's death.
Raven Rudd found her 4-year-old unresponsive on November 30th of 2022, and the child was rushed to the hospital where they were pronounced dead. Arrest papers show Rudd revealed to police the child had gotten hurt while hiking days before and had gotten sick. When police asked Rudd why she didn't seek medical help, she told them she thought she knew what was best for her child.
Former deputy DA will not see jail time after admitting to sexually assaulting a child. This man, David McConkey, was sentenced to 5 years sex offender supervised probation this afternoon. It's a Class 5 felony after taking a plea deal back in April. Digital content manager Lauren Watson listened in on the sentencing today. She's at the 11 Alert desk now. Lauren, McConkey spoke in court today ahead of that sentence being handed down.
Adam, that sentence was for a charge of attempt to commit sexual assault on a child, and in his statements to the court today, McConkey actually admitted that the incident went past just an attempt. This is video we've got today of McConkey at the El Paso County Courthouse. He was arrested in 2023 and charged with sexual assault on a child by one in a position of trust. As part of his deal, McConkey pleaded to the lesser charge, the attempted assault. The judge said several times the agreement was extremely favorable to McConkey today. In his plea agreement, he admitted to at least one incident when the victim was 10 or 11, where he inappropriately touched the victim and, quote, could have removed his hand sooner. The victim spoke remotely to the court today, saying her priority was an admission of what he did. The 5-year supervised probation sentence includes conditions like seeking treatment, which McConkey has been attending since early May, not having contact with anyone under 18 with the exception of his biological children, and registering as a sex offender within the next few days. Jail time is still a possibility if any of those conditions aren't met, and that probation can also be terminated early if appealed, though the judge in the case said she would not expect that to happen unless at least half of the sentence has been served.
So I sat here through your trial, and I heard all of the witnesses testify, and I can make my own independent assessment as to whether or not I find that their witnesses are credible. And of course, I make a motion. Your lawyer made a motion for directed verdict, and had I found that they weren't credible, I could have said, yeah, you're right, all of this, none of this should be here. But I said, no, it's a question of fact for the fact finder. They're going to make a decision. And then the 12 people went back and they made a decision that you sexually assaulted all of these children. So now you're a convicted sex offender. So the fact that you stand here and say that, oh, I'm taking responsibility for it. Sorry, they misinterpreted it. No one misinterpreted it. We all know what you did now because we heard them testify, and 12 of your peers found you guilty of it. So there should be no more confusion moving forward. Those children all testified truthfully and honestly that you put them in positions of sexually assaulting them, touching their body, their children, and you're the teacher. It's everybody's worst nightmare. You put these parents in a difficult position. You have their children being sexually assaulted. You have the mother just standing here talking about how her daughter didn't want to go to school to not face you, and she sent her, so she sent her to be sexually assaulted by you? And although the prosecution had their 768 witness who came in, she was really credible. She was very credible because she could articulate much better than the younger children. And she remembered exactly what happened at that daughter's sleepover. And although you're not convicted of that, I know your lawyer's got a defense to it. We're not retrying that case. But I am certain that what she said happened. So you knew exactly what you were going to do in that school, and you took advantage of those kids without even being worried that someone else was going to notice it. And you did it in the sneakiest, slimiest way possible. You touched them when they were sitting on your lap. How disgusting is that? How disgusting are you as you stand before this court? It's the sentence of the court as adopted 2024-291-275 FH. We've got 6 counts of criminal sexual conduct, person under 13, with guideline range here stemming from 36 to 71. The court's not satisfied that the guidelines can anticipate this situation. Our legislator has said that criminal sexual conduct second degree has a penalty of 15 years, and that's touching of minor children under 13 with a defendant older than 17 years of age. I don't know if anybody anticipates that the person that they're anticipating committing such a crime is somebody that is put into our school districts as a teacher who has complete control and authority against these minor children. I've never seen an OV that certainly could account for that. The predatory conduct on OV 10 scored at 15 points doesn't even touch the dishonesty and demented behavior that occurred here. So therefore the court does not find that the offense variable 10 is even properly scored at 15, that there should be higher guideline ranges associated with a school teacher and minor children at elementary school. In addition, the defendant continued to groom these children, and the court does agree that although you knew that there was a prior conduct with a minor child, that you did not disclose that. I promise you, every single one of those teachers who got up and testified and said they thought you were a nice person didn't know that someone had originally made a complaint regarding you, and that you were actually facing a felony criminal sexual conduct charge. And you put yourself in a position to be around these children. That was your choice, nobody else's. You could have taken yourself out of it. And I read the letters from your wife and your daughters, and I feel terrible for your family and what you've done to your family, because they don't see you as the same person that this other side of the room sees you as. All right, you didn't take advantage of them or hurt them, at least as far as I know, but certainly you did what you could when you had the opportunity to. Your conduct was certainly predatory in nature, and that you did breach the public trust. Therefore, it's the sentence of the court as to all 6 counts. It's 10 years to 15 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections. You'll get your 58 days of credit. DNA cost is 60, state cost is 408. Crime victim rate is 130. You're going to comply with DNA testing. You're going to get an HIV test, and you're going to comply with the sex offender registration requirements that do require lifetime GPS tether upon parole from prison. You are going to get STD, STI testing, and there's going to be no contact directly or indirectly with the victims, ES, II, and JS. You do have the right to petition the Court of Appeals you have an absolute right to petition the Court of Appeals for appellate review. And you have 42 days to make a request for counsel. Ms. Giuliani, does your client have his appellate rights?
Yes, Your Honor, it's already filled out, so can the record reflect I'm turning it in?
Absolutely, the record will reflect that it's being turned in.
And
anything else from anyone?
Excuse me, lifetime GPS tether upon parole.
I said that.
You did?
Yeah.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Your Honor, all counts are concurrent to each other.
Oh, 1 through 6 run concurrent with one another.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else? You may approach.
No, thank you.
All right, we're all set.
All right.
Everybody stay seated, please.
A convicted child molester in Posey County will spend 8 decades in prison. Last month, a jury found Jeffrey Wagner of Evansville guilty of child molesting. During the 4-day trial, jurors heard from the alleged victim, who testified Wagner sexually abused them when they were under the age of 10. The judge ordered Wagner's sentences to run consecutively, bringing his total time to 80 years in prison.
Former elementary school art teacher in Austin was sentenced today for possession of child sexual abuse material. 54-year-old Kevin Abeta was sentenced in Hayes County to 71 years in prison. That's according to the DA, which identifies Abeta as a former Travis County educator who worked at Campbell Elementary School. And it says a jury found Abeta guilty of continuous sexual abuse of a child, 6 counts of possession of child pornography with intent to promote, and 13 counts of possession of child pornography.
New at 5:30, a former Indiana high school counselor who was charged for having an inappropriate relationship with a student was back in court this morning for sentencing.
And today we heard from the victim for the first time on the witness stand. Brittany Eisner is charged with child seduction and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. She was arrested October of 2024 after allegations involving an inappropriate relationship between Eisner and a Floyd Central High School student. Eisner at the time was a counselor at the school. In the sentencing hearing today, we heard from the victim on how she said the inappropriate actions escalated.
Things began to escalate my junior year. She knew I was severely struggling with mental health and an eating disorder. She was also aware that my parents' relationship with me was very rocky and that we were not getting along very well. We began meeting up to talk and hang out, and things quickly escalated. Before we had sexual relations the first time, she had made the comment that if we do things, I better not tell anybody because she would lose her whole life. This proves that she was fully aware that what she was doing was wrong and chose to do it anyway.
Eisner was fired by New Albany Floyd County Schools. She had worked for the district since 2018. Eisner took a plea deal. It keeps her out of jail as long as she stays out of trouble. She'll serve 2 years on home detention with 1 additional year suspension.
New at 5:30, a former Indiana high school counselor who was charged for having an inappropriate relationship with a student was back in court this morning for sentencing.
And today we heard from the victim for the first time on the witness stand. Brittany Eisner is charged with child seduction and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. She was arrested October of 2024 after allegations involving an inappropriate relationship between Eisner and a Floyd Central High School student. Eisner at the time was a counselor at the school. In the sentencing hearing today, we heard from the victim on how she said the inappropriate actions escalated.
Things began to escalate my junior year. She knew I was severely struggling with mental health and an eating disorder. She was also aware that my parents' relationship with me was very rocky and that we were not getting along very well. We began meeting up to talk and hang out, and things quickly escalated. Before we had sexual relations the first time, she had made the comment that if we do things, I better not tell anybody because she would lose her whole life. This proves that she was fully aware that what she was doing was wrong and chose to do it anyway.
Eisner was fired by New Albany Floyd County Schools. She had worked for the district since 2018. Eisner took a plea deal. It keeps her out of jail as long as she stays out of trouble. She'll serve 2 years on home detention with 1 additional year suspension.
Former Oakland County substitute teacher Timothy Doherty will spend up to 15 years in prison for his connection to a sexual assault case involving students. He was found guilty of second-degree criminal sexual conduct in May. They worked at Spring Mills Elementary School in Highland Township. When those crimes took place, his victims were between 9 and 11. Attorney Ben Johnson, representative to the 11 families of those abused children, says they are planning to file a civil lawsuit.
A former Jefferson County deputy is facing federal prison time for receiving child pornography. Caleb Sickinger was sentenced to 9 years in prison. The case began in Alabama after the FBI arrested an individual who claimed to have received the messages from a woman in Idaho. FBI agents in Idaho eventually identified the woman and the child depicted in the images. However, agents learned the woman had not been involved in the crime. Soon after, 45-year-old Caleb Sickinger from Rigby revealed he had been pretending to be the woman. He was still a deputy with Jefferson County at the time of his arrest. A spokesperson from Jefferson County confirmed that. He admitted to using pictures of the child from social media and then digitally altering them to appear as child pornography, then distributed those images to the individual arrested in Alabama. Sickinger pleaded guilty to his charges April of this year. After completing his sentence, Sickinger is going to be placed on supervised release and will be required to register as a sex offender.
Well, a federal judge in Lubbock ruled a 245-year prison sentence is necessary for a man he describes as a, quote, incredible danger to the public. A Lubbock County jury convicted 21-year-old Jules Armstead back in April. After a 4-day trial, they found him guilty of producing child pornography, attempting to produce similar child sex abuse material, and cyber stalking. Prosecutors showed the court that over the course of 3 years, the San Angelo man found and met his targets, at least 9 children and 1 adult, on social media. He then coerced them to send him sexually explicit photos and videos and would threaten to then send them to their families if they did not create and send more explicit content. Tens of thousands of pages of messages, along with hundreds of photos and videos, were shown to the jury as evidence. This case was brought to court as part of the Justice Department's Project Safe Childhood, a nationwide initiative to combat child sexual exploitation and abuse.
A third person is sentenced for the repeated assault of an 8-year-old girl. This is a case from Janesville that police there called a house of horrors. 27-year-old Cody Markham is sentenced to 40 years in prison, followed by another 20 years of supervised parole. He was found guilty of incest and repeated sexual assault of a minor. His mother and father have already been sentenced for their involvement in the case. Spencer Markham was sentenced to 30 years in prison, while Kelly Markham was sentenced to 20 years. Eyewitness News is committed to supporting survivors of all forms of violence. We have a list of resources here in our community. Just go to our website, mystateline.com, and find the State Line Strong tab.
A man called a predator by the Randolph County State's Attorney will spend the rest of his life in prison for attacking teens for over 50 years across 2 states. Investigators say many of the assaults took place inside the suspect's Tilden, Illinois home. 5 on your side's Holden Kerwicki was in court as the man pled guilty.
July 12th, investigators arrested 67-year-old Clyde Thibodeau after it was reported he sexually assaulted a child under the age of 13 inside his Tilden, Illinois home on multiple occasions.
One of the victims reported this to a social worker who was checking in on her for other reasons, and then it really snowballed into something much larger.
According to Randolph County State's Attorney Chris Kenneman, while Sparta police investigators questioned Thibodeau, he admitted to attacking 8 children in Randolph County, 2 in St. Clair County, and another in Louisiana over a 50-year period.
Thibodeau will never harm a child ever again.
2 of Thibodeau's victims detailed how his actions negatively impacted their lives for the court.
I'm glad that we were able to get justice for them, and it was kind of hard to listen to how they were victimized by this man who they called a monster.
In exchange for pleading guilty to 3 counts of predatory sexual assault, Thibodeau was given 3 consecutive 60-year sentences.
Well, 180 years is justice for the victims. And 180 years is a message and a warning to all of those who would victimize children. We will find you, and when we do, you will be next.
Thibodeau is now in the custody of the Illinois Department of Corrections, where he will serve out a 180-year sentence. One of his victims told the court that they could now rest easier after years of crying themselves to sleep. Reporting in Chester, Illinois, Holden Kerwicki, 5 on your side.
In Sumner County, a Hendersonville man is sentenced to 64 years in prison for child sex crimes. Officials say Dennis Gilliam was convicted by a jury in June. Gilliam was arrested after a search warrant revealed he had hundreds of images and videos of children being sexually abused. Officials said some of the children appeared to be as young as 5 years old.
Former teacher from Austin has been sentenced to 71 years in prison. 54-year-old Kevin Abeta is convicted of continuous sexual abuse of a child, along with several child pornography charges. Abeta was formerly an art teacher at Campbell Elementary School. He is not eligible for parole.
Just into the newsroom, a 30-year-old Long Beach man was sentenced to 30 years for child abuse. Omar DeLuna pleaded guilty yesterday. After accepting the plea, a judge sentenced DeLuna to 30 years in prison with 15 suspended. That means he'll be serving a total of 15 years. The case opened up when police got a call reporting that a 6-year-old had not shown up to school. Another student told officials that the victim was absent because DeLuna had abused the child. An investigation followed, led to DeLuna's arrest, and he eventually pled guilty.
The Littlefield man will now spend the rest of his life in prison for repeatedly sexually abusing a child. A Lamb County jury convicted 39-year-old Lorenzo Ramirez following a week-long trial. According to the Lamb County District Attorney's Office, prosecutors proved he repeatedly molested a child attorneys describe as, quote, well under the age of 14. The jury imposed a life sentence. Ramirez is not eligible for parole. Ricky Redmond, the Lamb County DA, says child abuse of any kind will not be tolerated. He vows his office will listen to survivors, pursue the truth, and do everything within the law to protect the most vulnerable.
New tonight, a man from Lenoir City, once a trusted scout leader, is set to spend 20 years in prison for sex crimes against children. He was sentenced for sexually abusing a young girl over more than a decade. It started when she was 6 years old. Emilio Ortiz recorded the abuse and used Facebook Messenger to set up meetings. Investigators arrested him back in 2020 in a sting with undercover officers. Authorities later found almost 1,000 images of child sex abuse on devices belonging to the suspect. That media included another child at a Blount County theater where the suspect worked.
A Wetzel County man who had 32 counts of alleged sex crimes against children was sentenced today, but not without some concern from residents. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bill Steinbach.
And I'm Hannah Hayes. News 9's Clara O'Neill has the details on his plea agreement.
70-year-old New Martinsville resident Joseph Ward will now serve 2 years in prison and 5 years probation related to child sex crimes.
How can one person overcome all of these children? How is that? How can that happen?
Dozens of people protested outside the Wetzel County Courthouse on Wednesday. Some family members, some just there to support and seek justice for the children involved. Joseph Ward was charged with 32 counts and pleaded guilty to 2 felony charges of child sex crimes. He was in possession of over 170 child pornographic CDs and photos, including the filming of a minor depicting sexually explicit conduct. After over an hour in the courtroom, he was sentenced to 2 years of prison time.
We had proposed that he serve 2 years on the first count, 5 years on the second consecutive, but the second one would be suspended. He'd be placed on 2 years probation when he gets out on the first count, and then after that he's subject to 15 years of supervised release, and he has to register for life as a sex offender.
Anthony Bland is the father of an alleged victim, and he does not think the sentence fits the crime.
I don't know how anybody can sleep at night knowing that a child molester that's ruined multiple kids' life is going to get to go to prison for 2 years and then just come right back out like nothing's ever happened. They take care of the criminal and the victim gets to pay. They don't get to see what the parents go through. They don't have to deal with their child.
Special prosecuting attorney Joe Canestraro says despite a sentence being handed down, the case may not be over just yet.
There's always been rumors out there that there are supposedly more people in Wetzel County that he may have done something to. Of course, that is not part of this plea. So jeopardy is not attached to anybody that may be a victim. So if there are other people out there that are willing to come forward like these children did, please do.
But the families impacted say they still want justice.
And my great niece has to live with this for the rest of her life. All I want to say is we need to ask Alina, ask her what her life is like.
And News 9 will, of course, keep you updated if any more information comes up with Mr. Ward. But for now, reporting in Wetzel County, I'm Clara O'Neill, News 9.
Hi, I'm Dylan Cleland. Thanks for watching. And here's another video to check out, and be sure to subscribe to our channel.
He was well known in Key Biscayne as a gymnastics coach, but tonight that man is a convicted sex offender after admitting he sexually assaulted some of his own students.
Yeah, however, the plea deal that sealed his fate almost fell apart after prosecutors tried to take back their offer at the last minute. NBC6 reporter Christian Colon has the story.
A former Key Biscayne gymnastics coach, now officially a convicted sex offender.
Each of them are punishable by up to 15 years in prison. How do you plead? Guilty or not guilty? Guilty.
More than a year after his arrest, 40-year-old Oscar Olea admitted he sexually assaulted some of his underage students, including this woman who told the court her childhood was shattered by her former coach.
I was abused. I was manipulated. I was lied. I was silenced. And I was violated.
In tears, she went face-to-face with Olea, urging the judge to reject a 12-year prison deal she said was not enough, but was offered by the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office.
12 years is not justice, it's an insult. More than 12 years have already passed since he preyed on my vulnerability. When I was just a young girl, invisible in a home where no one protected me.
Her criticism prompted prosecutors to change course and urge the judge to reject their own deal, leaving Olea's defense team stunned.
What would that do if I started right now setting the precedent that all of a sudden we would change our mind less than a week later, even though we know that there's contractual obligations that we have as attorneys?
Despite prosecutors backing out, the judge said he had no choice but to uphold the agreement signed last week, a ruling that brought a sense of closure to another victim.
He has no power over me. I was a victim and now I'm a survivor, and it feels so great.
A third victim was also grateful Olea would get some punishment and offered these words to possible victims of abuse.
Absolutely, do not be afraid to tell your parents. Do not be afraid to tell. If you can't tell your parents, tell someone that you trust.
Again, Olea was sentenced to 12 years in prison, followed by 10 years of probation. He must also register as a sex offender and stay away from all the victims and Key Biscayne. We did reach out to his attorneys today, but they did not want to comment. In Miami, Christian Colon, NBC6.
At noon, a man will spend 15 years in prison for trying to kidnap a young girl away from her mother in Greenville County. 69-year-old Robert Mistretta pled guilty yesterday to attempted kidnapping. The 13th Circuit solicitor says Mistretta tried to grab the child while she was on the way to West Cliff Elementary School in 2021. The child's mother was able to keep hold of her. Deputies say Mistretta was found later with the student's school ID that he ripped away during the struggle.
County man will be spending decades in prison for crimes against children. The Webster County Chief Deputy says Anthony Caladerio will spend 30 years in prison on a long list of crimes to include statutory rape, sexual battery, forcible rape, and gratification of lust with a minor. Now, some of these charges date back as far as 2017 and involves two victims. He says one of the victims being 12 years old at the time. Also new at 4.
Seymour will spend 25 years in prison after a jury found him guilty of statutory sodomy. The investigation against Bobby Castning started in 2019 when a girl under the age of 14 told investigators that Castning started abusing her 5 years earlier at his home in Seymour. A judge declared a mistrial during his first trial back in 2021, but a jury found him guilty during a retrial in May.
ICE arrested a man convicted of child sex crimes in Durham County.
Federal officials arrested Porfirio Bermal Fregosa this weekend. He pleaded guilty to attempted rape of a child and indecent liberties with a child in 2013. DHS says he's an undocumented individual from Mexico.
Convicted child rapist will learn how long he will spend in prison. 45-year-old Jeffrey Moses was convicted of assaulting a 12-year-old in Hendersonville on Halloween in 2023. Moses was caught on site by police. A jury convicted him of rape of a child, attempted rape, and aggravated sexual battery earlier this year. Moses faces a minimum sentence of 25 years in prison with a maximum sentence of 84 years.
And a man has been sentenced to up to 25 years in prison after pleading guilty to attempted sexual assault on a child. Martin Amba III also pleaded guilty to child abuse or neglect. He'll be eligible for parole after 10 years. Upon his release, Amba must register as a sex offender and serve lifetime supervision.
A Gaffney man has been sentenced to life in prison for child sex abuse. According to the 7th Circuit Solicitor's Office, 46-year-old Daniel Machito Buxton repeatedly abused a young girl from 2020 to 2022. Buxton was later found guilty of criminal sexual conduct with a minor, and he has been sentenced to life in prison without parole.
An Evansville man will serve 80 years in prison for child molestation in Posey County. A jury found Jeffrey Scott Wagner guilty of child molestation after hearing testimony from two young victims. On Tuesday, the prosecutor's office says one victim gave an impact statement after considering all of the evidence and hearing arguments from prosecutors and defense. The judge found Wagner's sentence should be aggravated. He'll be taken to the Indiana Department of Correction. An Evansville man will serve 80 years in prison for child molestation in Posey County. A jury found Jeffrey Scott Wagner guilty of child molestation after hearing testimony from 2 young victims. On Tuesday, the prosecutor's office says one victim gave an impact statement. After considering all of the evidence and hearing arguments from prosecutors and defense, the judge found Wagner's sentence should be aggravated. He'll be taken to the Indiana Department of Correction.
Fond du Lac County man convicted of first-degree sexual assault of a child, now sentenced to 40 years in prison. Juan Carlos Roca Mejia pleaded no contest last month for attempting to sexually assault a 12-year-old girl. As we reported, authorities say the girl's mother gave her daughter to Roca Mejia to be sexually assaulted for $250. He held the girl in a van and attempted to duct tape her mouth while sexually assaulting her. The girl fought back. She bit Roca Mejia and escaped that van. A neighbor called 911 and a SWAT team was used to arrest Roca Mejia. The judge today sentencing him to 40 years in prison with 20 years extended supervision. And the mother convicted of sex trafficking her 12-year-old daughter to Roca Mejia, also sentenced in Fond du Lac County Court today. The mother entered guilty pleas back in May to trafficking a child and failing to protect a child, as well as 2 bail jumping counts. In court today, the judge handing out a sentence of a total of 34 years in prison, 20 years extended supervision. We are not naming the mother to protect the young victim.
A man from Staten Island was sentenced by a Berkshire County jury Wednesday for child rape. According to the Berkshire County DA's office, 69-year-old David Gonzalez was sentenced 18 to 20 years in state prison for 2 charges related to the assault of a child. The incident occurred in July of 2017 while the defendant was in the Berkshires. The DA's office says the victim and her family read powerful victim impact statements at the sentencing.
Also, a Plano man will spend the rest of his life in prison after being convicted of sexually abusing a young child. 54-year-old Christopher Clark Owen was found guilty of sexual abuse of a 7-year-old child that spanned over several years. According to the county DA's office, the victim told his mom about the abuse, and she then reported it to the Plano Police Department. Owens will not have a chance of parole.
Breaking news tonight at 6, a North Fort Myers man convicted of sexually abusing a child and having nude photos and videos of the victim was just sentenced to 30 years in prison. Investigators say the victim's parents called their daughter in 2023, and Baron Barber answered the phone on FaceTime claiming he was a friend. They say he had sex with the victim in a van and at the child's house.
In Western North Carolina, a woman will spend at least 5 years in prison for the sexual exploitation of a minor. Destiny Gilliland was found guilty of 1 count of first-degree and 1 count of second-degree sexual exploitation of a minor. Rutherford County deputies say this investigation started in April of last year. Gilliland was sentenced to between 5 and 11 years in prison. She is also required to register as a sex offender for 30 years.
Tonight, a St. Louis County man is sentenced to 8 years in prison for child sexual abuse materials. James Astorian pleaded guilty to 1 count of possession of the materials. Investigators say Astorian was caught with more than 6,000 images and more than 700 videos containing child sexual abuse. He's also been ordered to pay $10,000 in restitution to identified victims.
Man sentenced to 6 years in federal prison for conspiring to receive and distribute child porn and possession of child pornography. 65-year-old Richard Hawker-Smith admitted that he and his co-defendant exchanged sex abuse material by sending an SD card back and forth in the mail for years. Along with the prison time, Hawker-Smith will serve a 10-year term of supervised release. He will also be required to register as a sex offender.
A man from Pittsfield was sentenced in Springfield's federal court to 46 years in prison for sexually exploiting children in his home. According to the Department of Justice, 39-year-old Justin Benoit documented the abuse and possessed hundreds of child abuse materials. He was arrested in 2022 following a search of his home where police found those materials. He pleaded guilty to the crimes in May. The defendant was also ordered to pay restitution requested by the victims.
A Pickens County man has been sentenced on a criminal sexual conduct with a minor charge. The 13th Circuit Solicitor's Office says 39-year-old Alfredo Escorza pleaded guilty last week. Evidence presented shows the crimes happened in 2023. A judge sentenced him to 15 years in the South Carolina Department of Corrections.
A Fluvanna County man has been sentenced to more than a century in prison for child exploitation. 43-year-old Adam C. Knight received 107 years and 3 months, with 15 years to be served actively. Knight pleaded guilty in April to 10 felony charges. Those include possession and distribution of child pornography, plus using a communication system to target children. The Fluvanna County Sheriff's Office began investigating in February 2023 after getting a tip from Tampa police. Knight also faces charges for sexual abuse of animals.
Omaha man will serve decades in prison for producing child pornography. In 2023, 34-year-old Darren Brown contacted a minor on Facebook, telling the child he was 19 years old. At the time, Brown was a 33-year-old registered sex offender. A school social worker reported Brown's relationship with the child to a school resource officer. And while searching Brown's phone, investigators found more than 530 sexually explicit images and 250 videos of Brown and the victim. Police say Brown knew the child was under 18 years old.
A Troy man also sentenced to 6 years in state prison in a sex crime involving a minor. Tyler Shelton pleading guilty to sexual abuse, admitting to taking advantage of the trust of a child that he was familiar with. At his sentencing, he was ordered to serve 10 years probation following those 3 years in jail. Shelton will additionally be required to register as a sex offender.
An Anthony man previously convicted for aggravated sexual assault of a child was sentenced Monday to life in prison on separate charges. According to the Department of Justice, 57-year-old Mark Martinez was sentenced in an El Paso court for several charges, including producing, possessing, and exchanging child sexual abuse material. Court documents say Martinez was convicted in 1991 for sexual assault of a child. Court records say he distributed child porn within a group on the social messaging app Kik. FBI agents seized several electronic devices that had hundreds of child porn images and videos. On a separate device, it revealed chats on the messaging app in which Martinez admitted to sexually molesting a minor. Martinez had fled to Mexico and was arrested at a port of entry in New Mexico in March of 2023. He pleaded guilty to those charges last year in August.
Thank you. A San Antonio man was sentenced to serve 50 years in prison after being convicted of sexually assaulting 2 young girls. Alan Evanshawn was found guilty of aggravated sexual assault of a child and 3 counts of indecency with a child. In October of 2018, the mother of the girl says they told her they had both been assaulted by him for some time. Evanshawn pleaded not guilty to the charges in 2022, but was convicted on 4 of the 5 charges brought against him.
A Richmond man is sentenced to 27 years in prison for producing child porn. Deputies arrested Derek Hahn in October of 2024 as the result of an undercover investigation by the Madison County Sheriff's Office. He was charged with 2 counts of distribution of matter portraying a sexual performance by a child over 12 but under age 18. Hahn was also ordered to pay $50,000 in restitution.
Developing tonight, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, a court has sentenced a Randolph County man to death. A jury found Joel Beltran guilty in the murder of a 14-month-old toddler and sentenced him to death. 3 years ago, Beltran was caring for the child when the toddler had to go to the hospital with severe injuries. Investigators found video evidence showing Beltran beating and suffocating that child, who later died. The last person from the county to be sentenced to death was in 2006, 19 years ago. That was also the year our state carried out the most recent execution. Today, more than 100 criminals statewide are on death row awaiting execution.
New at 6, an East Texas man will now spend 3 decades in federal prison for his role in producing child pornography. 29-year-old Enrique Adrian Gomez, who you see on your screen, pleaded guilty to producing child pornography. In court, it was shared that Gomez met 2 minors who were younger than 13 online and persuaded them to engage in sexually explicit acts. Authorities say the case is a disturbing reminder of the dangers children face online and encourage parents to actively monitor their children's online activity. This week, McLennan County prosecutors secured 2 separate life sentences in child sex abuse cases. 50-year-old Donald Ray Hackworth was sentenced to 3 life terms for indecency with a child by contact plus 17 years for exposure. The case began in 2020 after an anonymous tip. Hackworth, a registered sex offender since 1999, must serve at least 30 years before parole eligibility. In Burnett County, 53-year-old Angel Escalante was convicted of continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14 and sentenced to life without parole. The abuse spanned years across both counties, and Escalante is still facing additional charges in McLennan County.
A 44-year-old Tucson man will spend the rest of his life behind bars. The Tucson Police Department tells us Peter Vancias sentenced to 156 years in prison today following his conviction on 12 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. TPD says the investigation began in 2023 when police were notified by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children that the suspect had uploaded suspected child sexual abuse material to their account. After an investigation, police searched his home in Tucson months later and found images and videos depicting the sexual exploitation of children, along with several firearms.
Broken clock on the back wall, counting down till the last bell rings. You lock the door with the plastic smile, say this is just our little secret thing. Ink stains on my test paper, your hand leaning where it shouldn't be. You twist the rules like a gold ring, say it's love, say it's meant to be. Leave the kids alone. You're not a savior, you're a thief on home. Predator in school clothes. Life in a cage is the place you go. See ya, Chomo. See ya, Chomo. We need justice, not a wish. This already go. Leave the kids alone. Leave the kids alone. You hide behind a chalk halo. Fake men are on a crooked throne. They call you man, they call you sir. You use that power, strip us to the bone. Female face, male face, same crime, same cold eyes when the door clicks shut. Courtroom shrug, they were almost grown. Light little sentence, deep little cut. Leave the kids alone. You're not a savior, you're a thief from home. Predator in school clothes. Life in a cage is the place you go. See ya, Chomo. See ya, Chomo. Need justice, not a wish, but sorry go. Judge with a tired handshake, gable falls like it's half awake. You get years, we can count on hands. We get scars, we can't understand. Names on a list, they move you towns. Paper walls, you still prowl around. Kids in rows like loaded guns. You pull the trigger, then you run. Leave the kids alone. You're not a savior.
When a child experiences trauma, they can be stripped of their ability to imagine. But imagination is colours. All the colours. Imagination is freedom. And whatever you want it to be. But a child without imagination is not a child at all. Will you help defend our right to imagine?